I bankrolled $28,000 for Dad's dream retirement trip, but my family replaced me with my sister's fiancé, so I pulled the plug on everything. I'm 32, male, a project manager for a commercial signage company in Fort Worth. I started as an installer, climbing scaffolding and mounting signs in Texas summer heat when it was 105 degrees and the metal would literally burn your skin if you weren't wearing gloves. I worked my way up through skill and hustle. Now I oversee contracts for everything from local stadiums to corporate buildings. Last quarter alone, I managed $1.3 million in projects, all delivered on schedule and under budget. I make around $85,000 a year plus bonuses when projects go well. My parents hit rough times during COVID 4 years ago. Dad worked construction sales for decades, killing it until the pandemic hit and the industry tanked. He was pulling in six figures selling commercial-grade materials to developers across 3 states. Then everything froze overnight. Mom hasn't held a steady job, always with a new excuse, back problems, changing job market. Now it's her candle-making business that somehow costs more than it makes. When their landlord sold their rental house, they faced potential homelessness. They asked if I could help just until they got back on their feet. I've always been practical with money. I still drive a 12-year-old Toyota 4Runner with 180 to 7,000 miles on it while it's still running smoothly. Even though I could afford something newer, it runs flawlessly. It's paid off and built to last. But I had the foresight to buy a second property as an investment in 2018. Nothing fancy, just a decent 2-bedroom condo in a safe area that had good rental potential. I put down 20% to avoid PMI and locked in a solid 3.5% 30-year fixed rate before rates went crazy. I agreed to let my parents move in at $800 a month, about a third of market rate. The mortgage is $1,400 plus $320 in HOA fees, so I was actually losing money every month. I figured they'd be grateful for the help, get back on their feet, and either start paying market rate or find their own place within a year. Fast forward 4 years and that rent money has shown up roughly 60% of the time. My parents have shorted me about $15,000 in rent over 4 years. Megan moving in 2 years ago only made things worse. "We'll catch up next month" became their motto, right alongside, "Why are you being so difficult about this?" My sister, 26, female. Megan is her own special category of entitlement. She has a marketing degree, party girl, who suddenly became career-focused when the real world started demanding actual work. She moved in with my parents about 2 years ago after her roommates got tired of covering her share of the rent. She tried the freelance social media consultant route for about 3 months before landing an entry-level job at a local marketing agency. She complained constantly about being undervalued despite having zero portfolio to show. She makes about $42,000 but spends like she's making $120,000. Anytime I'd bring up the missing rent, Mom would hit me with, "We're family, not some corporation. Why are you nickel and diming us?" Meanwhile, they never missed a payment on their new SUV or Megan's monthly spa treatments. Dad once told me with a straight face that they couldn't afford rent that month because they had to pay for Megan's $400 hair extensions. Last year, I drove over unannounced on a Saturday and found them hosting a backyard barbecue with about 20 people. They'd installed a new 75-inch TV I hadn't seen before and had apparently just finished a kitchen remodel with granite countertops. When I asked about the rent money they owed me, Mom whispered, "Not now. We have guests," like I was being the rude one. The breaking point came when Dad finally retired in March. Unlike most construction guys, he managed to avoid major injuries, though his knees are completely shot from years of job site visits. He needs replacement surgery but keeps putting it off. For years he'd talk about wanting to see Dubai. "Greatest construction achievement of our time," he'd say, like he personally advised on the Burj Khalifa blueprint. He had this coffee table book about Dubai skyscrapers that he'd flip through at least once a week, telling anyone who'd listen about the engineering marvels. I decided to make it happen as a retirement gift. I figured it would finally earn some appreciation and maybe reset our relationship. $28,000 for a 10-day trip to Dubai. First-class Emirates flights from DFW, 4-star hotel near the Burj Khalifa. Desert safari excursions. The works. I spent weeks researching the best time to go. I even connected with my college buddy James, who's been working for an engineering firm there for 3 years. Guy's living like a king in an expat compound, driving a Mercedes he got tax-free. He promised to show us the real Dubai, not just the tourist traps. When I announced the trip at dinner, the initial shock and gratitude lasted about 5 minutes before Megan asked if Trevor could come. Freaking Trevor. Trevor is my sister's fiancé. And what happens when privilege meets delusion? Imagine every LinkedIn cliché packed into one 29-year-old with perfect teeth and a trust fund he pretends doesn't exist. He calls himself a serial entrepreneur and disruptive business strategist. But his actual business model consists of talking about business while others pay his bills. His LinkedIn profile reads like AI-generated corporate nonsense. Lots of leveraging synergies but zero actual revenue. His profile picture is him in front of a rented Tesla pointing at nothing while wearing a Patagonia vest. Classic. His venture capital connections consist of a second cousin who works as an administrative assistant at a firm that once invested in a failed meal kit startup. He constantly name-drops tech companies like he has inside knowledge, but it's all stuff he read on TechCrunch that morning. Every conversation with him eventually turns into a pitch for his latest venture, which is always just vague enough that you can't actually tell what the business does. Last Thanksgiving, he cornered me for 40 minutes explaining his revolutionary app idea. The entire concept was basically Uber but for dog walking, which already exists in about 12 different forms. He has an uncanny ability to order the most expensive item on any menu while simultaneously reaching for his phone when the check arrives. Classic move, oh, I need to respond to this email real quick, followed by a 15-minute bathroom break that mysteriously coincides with bill paying time. I initially said no to Trevor joining. I was maxing out my budget for 4 people. Megan immediately went full. Karen, why do you always have to ruin everything? It's not like you can't afford it with your fancy project manager job. She conveniently ignored the fact that her marketing specialist role paid her enough to afford a weekend trip to Austin, not a luxury Dubai vacation. My parents sided with her. Mom's classic guilt trip, but we're family, and Trevor is going to be family soon. Don't you want your father to have everyone there for his retirement celebration? Dad joined in, son. It would mean a lot to have everyone there. Trevor's actually quite knowledgeable about international business. I looked Trevor dead in the eye and said, if you want to come, you can pay your own way. Should be pocket change for someone with your business acumen. The way his face twitched told me everything I needed to know about his bank account. He mumbled something about liquidating some assets and transferring funds from offshore accounts, which I'm pretty sure was code for asking my daddy for money. The subject seemed to drop after a few days. I thought they'd finally accepted my boundaries. I should have known better. These are people who believe boundaries are just suggestions, like speed limits or tax laws. I remember Trevor bragging about how a college buddy of his now worked TSA at DFW. He said if I ever needed a favor, he'd take care of it. Trevor smirked. I thought he was full of it. Now it all made sense. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. 2 weeks before the trip, Trevor cornered me in my parents' kitchen while I was grabbing coffee. So, I've been thinking about maximizing our Dubai opportunity, he said, not looking up from his phone. Uh-huh, I replied, not giving an inch while I poured myself a cup of coffee I'd brought over. We need to book meetings with real estate developers while we're there. The UAE market is primed for disruption, and I've got concepts they'll want to hear. I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. Seriously, all the big players are there, MR Properties, Nakheel, Damak. This could be the perfect chance to secure some seed funding for my next venture. Not in the budget, Trevor. I'm already covering the entire $28,000 family trip. I'd actually checked out these companies while planning the trip. The idea that they'd take a meeting with a random American with no portfolio, credentials, or actual business plan was laughable. But, this is a once-in-a-lifetime networking opportunity, he pressed, finally looking up from his phone. I've been developing a concept for a revolutionary co-living space that combines WeWork with high-end residential. So, an apartment building with desks? I asked. His eyes narrowed. It's more nuanced than that. It's about creating synergistic living environments that foster cross-pollination of ideas while maximizing square footage utility. Right. Still not in the budget. That evening, Megan confronted me about it, calling me a jerk for not helping with Trevor's important business opportunity. According to her, I was sabotaging his career because I was jealous of his vision. I stood my ground. The trip was for Dad's retirement, not Trevor's imaginary business deals. Fast forward to departure day. I was finishing paperwork on a project when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We've decided that Trevor is coming on the trip instead of you. He's more fun and will take better photos for social media. Your father agrees he'll be better company than you would be. I stared at my phone. My stomach dropped. Was this some kind of sick joke? I replied asking what she meant. She said, I kid you not. Trevor was taking my seat and I could always go on another trip sometime. They needed Trevor there for his business connections anyway. I replied with one word, understood. Then I closed my office door and did what they least expected. I called Emirates directly to investigate what was happening. The agent confirmed I was checked in for departure in 3 hours while I was sitting in my office 20 miles away. After speaking with supervisors, I discovered that Megan had called Emirates a week earlier, claiming I had a medical emergency. She tried to get the ticket changed to Trevor's name, but Emirates doesn't allow easy name transfers. Instead, they planned to have Trevor use my boarding pass and somehow clear security. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was fraud. I called Emirates back and spoke to their fraud department. Since everything was booked under my name and credit card, I had leverage. While they couldn't stop passengers already checked in for today's flight, they could flag the return portion for security review. I then requested a full cancellation and refund of the return tickets, citing fraud. Next, I logged into Booking.com and canceled the hotel reservations. Then I methodically called each tour company and canceled every excursion. I called James in Dubai to explain the situation. They were about to board a flight to a country they'd never visited, thinking everything was paid for, but I'd canceled it all. They'd kicked me off my own trip to bring Trevor instead. That's cold, man, he paused. Also completely deserved. What are they going to do when they land? Figure it out, I guess. Dubai isn't exactly budget-friendly for unprepared tourists. A decent meal at a mid-range restaurant runs $50 to $75 per person. A taxi from the airport to the city center is around $50. Their emergency fund would evaporate within 48 hours. I called my bank and reported my credit card as compromised, had a new one issued with a different number, and froze my other accounts temporarily just in case anyone had my account details. I wasn't taking any chances. These people had proven they felt entitled to my money. My best friend Matt always saw through their BS and warned me, but I didn't listen, so I texted him. Remember that conversation about consequences? It's happening now. He came over that night with drinks, and his buddy Ryan, who works as a locksmith. By 10 p.m., every lock in my rental property had been changed, new security cameras installed, and a keypad lock mounted by the front door. I contacted a property management company I'd worked with through work, had them draw up a formal lease agreement at full market rate, $2,850 per month, utilities not included, first and last month's rent due immediately upon signing. Finally, I called my real estate attorney. I'd used him before for property matters, and he quickly drew up an official eviction notice giving them 30 days to either sign the new lease or vacate the premises. That wasn't all. While my real estate attorney was drawing up the eviction paperwork, I explained how Trevor had used my personal information to board the flight. He'd essentially committed identity theft. My attorney, who also handled criminal cases, immediately saw the opportunity. We need to document this fully, he said. This isn't just a family dispute anymore. It's potentially criminal fraud. I filed a police report the next morning, bringing copies of my text messages, screenshots of the original booking confirmation, and the flight records showing someone had used my ticket. The officer taking the report looked impressed by my documentation. Most identity theft cases don't have this level of evidence, he said. Usually it's just a mysterious charge on someone's credit card, not a fully documented case with admissions and text messages. I also called Emirates back and asked to speak to their fraud department again. The rep was professionally horrified when I explained what happened. Sir, this is a serious security breach, she said. Someone using another person's boarding pass and identification is something we track very closely. She flagged the incident for internal review and assured me they'd be investigating. And remember Trevor's TSA buddy? Seems the guy helped him bypass the ID check. Emirates didn't catch the mismatch until the return leg, which triggered a security review. My attorney sent a formal cease and desist letter regarding the identity theft and helped me file charges for identity fraud and misuse of personal information. Their Emirates flight landed in Dubai around 7 p.m. local time. I imagine the excitement as they deplaned, all smiles and Instagram stories ready for their luxury vacation. Except there was no hotel shuttle waiting, no reservation, no return flights. Matt came over to my place that night with pizza and drinks. We also spent some time setting up a detailed spreadsheet tracking every penny they'd borrowed or taken from me over the years, with dates, amounts, and any promises made about repayment. The first panicked call hit my phone around 9 p.m. My time. I didn't answer. Then another, and another. My phone started blowing up with text messages, which Matt and I read out loud between bites of pizza. Megan, what the heck did you do, Trevor? This is completely unprofessional and potentially illegal. My attorney will be contacting you. Mom, please call us back. We don't know what to do. I replied with a single text. Enjoy Dubai with Trevor. I hear he's more fun than I am. Then I turned off my phone and enjoyed the first peaceful night I'd had in months. Matt couldn't stop laughing. Dude, Trevor's attorney. What attorney represents people who can't afford their own plane tickets? The same one who handles all his billion-dollar deals? I replied, reaching for another slice of pizza. 2 days later, I turned my phone back on. The messages were becoming interesting. Dad, we had to call Trevor's father to wire emergency money. You've embarrassed me in front of my new family member. Megan, Trevor fell off a camel during the desert tour we had to book last minute. He broke his arm and can't take photos of anything now. Mom's so upset. This is all your fault. Screw you. Amazing how my fault extends to a pissed-off camel. From their messages, I pieced together a pretty clear picture of their Habibi adventure. They were stranded at the airport with no hotel reservation, no transportation, and rapidly dwindling funds. They had to call Trevor's parents to wire emergency cash. That must have been a fun conversation. Hey, Dad, we need $5,000 wired immediately, or we'll be sleeping in the airport. They spent 3 nights in a budget hotel by the airport that apparently had cockroaches the size of mice. Based on my research, they probably paid about $400 per night for this privilege. Dubai's version of a budget hotel is still priced for oil barons compared to American standards. The coup de grace was Trevor having to sell his vintage Rolex, definitely a knockoff, to cover some expenses. From what I could gather through their texts, he got about $500 for a watch he claimed was worth $12,000. Tragic. So they landed back in Texas 5 days after they left, having spent most of the trip panicking, broke, and apparently being chased by stray dogs near their budget hotel. According to Megan's angry texts, they spent most of their time arguing in the hotel room with Trevor blaming her for the vacation from hell, and my parents questioning their future son-in-law's business acumen. My favorite part, though, they apparently tried to visit the Burj Khalifa but couldn't afford the observation deck tickets. So the centerpiece of Dad's dream trip was something they only saw from the ground. Sucks to suck. When they pulled up to my place in an Uber, I was standing in the driveway with Matt. We were casually drinking coffees, looking like we'd been having the time of our lives while they were suffering in Dubai. I'd positioned both our cars in the driveway, my 4Runner and his Tacoma, so they couldn't pull in. What the actual heck was that? My dad shouted as he got out of the car, his face lobster red from either the desert sun or rage. I took a slow sip of my coffee. That was what consequences look like. You stranded us in a foreign country, my mother screamed. We could have died. Yet here you are, I observed. Alive and well. -1 functional arm, I see. I nodded toward Trevor, whose arm was in a makeshift sling. Trevor stepped forward, wincing. You realize what you've done is actionable, right? I have contacts at 3 major law firms who would take this case pro bono. Matt snorted. Damn, that must be convenient. Do these law firms also provide medical care for camel-related injuries? Because that sling looks like it was made by a toddler with a dish towel. You have no idea what we've been through, Dad growled. Trevor broke his arm when the camel threw him. The hotel they put us in had no working air conditioning. Megan got food poisoning from a street vendor. We had to sleep in the airport one night because our credit cards wouldn't work, my mother added, and the embassy was absolutely no help at all. This last part didn't surprise me at all. What did they expect the embassy to do? Hello, American Embassy? My son paid for a luxury vacation and then canceled it when we uninvited him. Please send the Marines. Don't forget the camel incident, I said, unable to hide my smirk. I heard that was particularly traumatic. Trevor's face turned an even deeper shade of red. That camel was clearly not trained properly. I specifically told the guide I was an experienced rider. Oh, I'm sure you did, Matt muttered just loud enough for everyone to hear. Right after you told him about your Fortune 500 connections and cryptocurrency portfolio, Megan was almost in tears now. We had to call Trevor's dad for money. Do you know how humiliating that was? Almost as humiliating as uninviting someone from a trip they paid for, I suggested. You never answered our calls, Mom nearly screamed. We didn't know what to do. Well, you figured it out, didn't you? And from what I hear, Dubai has one of the lowest crime rates in the world. Plus you had Trevor, the international business expert. I figured you were in capable hands. That's when I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the lease agreement and eviction notice. Since we're having a heart-to-heart, let me set some things clear. Here are the new terms for the condo: $2,850 per month, utilities not included. First and last month's rent due immediately. You have 30 days to either sign this new lease or vacate the premises. They stared at the papers like I'd handed them a death sentence. This is illegal, Trevor started. It's completely legal. I cut him off. You were never on any lease. My parents have been month-to-month tenants paying well below market rate, and I've decided to change the terms. It's all laid out in black and white. What? Why? We don't have that kind of money right now, Mom protested. Not my problem, I replied. I'm sure Trevor's parents can help you out again like they did in Dubai. My father stepped forward, his voice suddenly soft. Son, this is extreme. We're talking about your family here. No, this isn't about family, it's about business. And business is what I'm doing now. As they turned to leave, I added one final point. Oh, and the locks have been changed. Your new keys will be provided after you sign the lease and pay the first and last month's rent. You can get access to retrieve your belongings by contacting the property management company listed on page 3. They didn't sign the new lease. They also didn't leave. The 30 days came and went with them ignoring my property manager's calls and emails. They thought they could wait me out, that I'd eventually soften and let them go back to the way things were. They were wrong. I filed for eviction exactly 1 day after the deadline passed. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. During that time, they alternated between ignoring me completely and sending manipulative messages. Mom, I raised you better than this. Dad, no son of mine would treat family this way. Megan, I hope you're happy destroying our lives for your petty revenge. Each message just reinforced that I'd made the right decision. Not once did they acknowledge their role in creating this situation. Not once did they offer to make amends or take responsibility. It was always about what I was doing to them, never about what they had done to me. While the eviction process was playing out, I wasn't just sitting idle. The identity theft angle was moving forward too. The police report I'd filed got assigned to a detective who specialized in fraud cases. He called me for a follow-up interview and seemed genuinely interested when I handed over the texts, screenshots, and flight records. This is pretty clear-cut, the detective said. Most identity theft is harder to prove, but they basically admitted to it in writing. Yeah, they weren't exactly geniuses. The Emirates Fraud Department also completed their review. An airline representative called to inform me they'd flagged Trevor's passport in their system and confirmed my original suspicion he'd used my boarding pass and identifying information to get through security and board the flight. My attorney was methodical about the whole process. He filed the identity theft and fraud charges separately from the eviction proceedings, explaining that mixing them would only complicate both cases. Let the criminal justice system handle the identity fraud while we focus on getting your property back, he advised. I used those 2 weeks productively, met with my financial advisor to adjust my investment strategy now that I wasn't subsidizing 3 adults, started talking to a real estate agent about potential properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods, even reactivated my dating profile after a 2-year hiatus. The judge at the eviction hearing was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who had clearly seen every sob story in the book. My attorney presented the case: tenants refusing to sign a new lease or vacate, history of irregular payments, property owners' right to adjust terms. Their defense consisted mainly of, but we're family and we've lived there for years, neither of which impressed the judge. Dad tried bringing up his knee problems and retirement, but the judge cut him off with a raised hand. Sir, medical conditions, while unfortunate, do not create tenancy rights, she said, peering over her glasses. Trevor tried to argue that as Megan's fiancé, he had some kind of right to be involved. The judge shut that down so fast I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Young man, unless your name is on a lease or you have established residency for the legally required period, you have no standing in these proceedings, she told him, not even trying to hide her annoyance. The ruling came down in my favor. They had 5 days to vacate the premises. As we left the courthouse, my mother grabbed my arm. You can't do this to us. Where are we supposed to go in 5 days? Maybe ask Trevor. He's practically family now, right? Trevor stepped forward. My parents aren't going to house your family. That's your responsibility. I laughed. Funny how your entrepreneurial spirit doesn't extend to solving actual problems. What happened to all those UAE investors you were going to impress? That meeting would have happened if you hadn't sabotaged the trip, he shot back. Right, I nodded. I'm sure the sheikhs were lined up to throw money at... What exactly is your business again? I've known you for over 2 years and still have no idea what you actually do. What Trevor didn't know was that his identity theft problems were just beginning. 2 days after the eviction hearing, he and Megan were served with papers for the fraud case. The look on his face when he realized this wasn't going away was priceless. Like watching someone who'd never faced consequences suddenly understand that actions have repercussions. They spent those 5 days alternating between begging, threatening, and guilt-tripping. None of it worked. On day 5, they finally moved out. My parents to my aunt's house, Trevor and Megan apparently to his parents' place despite his earlier protests. When they left, they took everything that wasn't bolted down, including appliances that were part of the property: dishwasher, microwave, washer, and dryer. They also deliberately damaged several walls, broke a bathroom mirror, and left all their trash. My property manager documented everything, and I filed a complaint for property damage. My attorney suggested I could take it to small claims court for the stolen appliances, but I decided to just track it and keep receipts. They weren't worth another legal battle. The replacement and repair costs came to about $4,200, which I added to the spreadsheet tracking their debt to me. Megan texted me too. Hey, I know we had our issues, but maybe we can grab coffee and talk this out. I'm willing to forgive everything if you help us with the first month's rent somewhere else. I didn't respond. A day later, she texted again. Fine. Hope you enjoy being alone forever. Screw you. 2 days later, I got a text from my father. Your mother and I have decided that until you apologize and make this right, you are no longer our son. We didn't raise you to be this heartless. I replied, understood. Best of luck with everything. My mother started calling everyone in the extended family, telling them how I had abandoned them when they needed me most, conveniently leaving out the years of financial support and the Dubai fiasco. My father started sending increasingly threatening texts. The last one included some pretty explicit threats about how I'd regret this decision for the rest of my life. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I forwarded the message to my attorney, who sent a cease and desist letter. When that didn't stop the messages, I filed for a restraining order. The restraining order was granted after I presented the judge with over 30 threatening messages. Meanwhile, the identity theft case was working its way through the system. They didn't end up in jail, but both Megan and Trevor were hit with misdemeanor charges and fines. It wasn't enough to land them behind bars, but it was enough to give them both criminal records. The DA wasn't interested in pursuing felony charges since it was a family matter, but he wasn't about to let them walk either. They offered a plea deal, misdemeanor charges in exchange for full cooperation and restitution. The airline security report sealed the deal. Emirates takes passenger identification very seriously, and their documentation of Trevor using my boarding pass was damning. The TSA agent who processed Trevor's boarding was also investigated. Turns out he was a friend of Trevor's from college who helped him bypass normal security protocols. He lost his job, and Emirates implemented stricter ID verification procedures as a result of the incident. Trevor got off with a misdemeanor because he claimed he was just using the boarding pass I gave him, and the TSA agent corroborated the lie. The agent took most of the heat. Trevor ended up with a $5,000 fine and 200 hours of community service. Megan got a slightly lighter sentence, $2,500 and 100 hours, since Trevor was the one who actually boarded the plane. Both were placed on probation for a year. The criminal records had immediate consequences. Megan lost a job offer at a marketing firm when it came up during her background check. Trevor's fake consulting business took an even bigger hit. Word got around about his criminal record, and suddenly those Fortune 500 connections he was always bragging about went silent. It's been a year since the Dubai disaster. I haven't heard from my immediate family since the restraining order was served. The silence has been surprisingly peaceful. I kept the condo, found reliable tenants who actually pay the full amount on time, and have been using the extra income to fund my hobbies and investments instead of subsidizing adult dependence. I used some of the newfound financial freedom to take an actual vacation of my own. 2 weeks in Costa Rica, surfing and hiking. Didn't post a single photo on social media, just enjoyed it for what it was. My cousin Laura dropped by a few times throughout the year, keeping me updated on the family drama. My parents had moved from my aunt's house to another relative's, then another, burning bridges at each stop. They'd taken loans from various family members, promising to pay back as soon as their situation stabilized. None of those loans had been repaid. Most of the extended family had cut ties with them after realizing they were being used as temporary ATMs. A role I knew all too well. Trevor bailed on Megan about 2 months after the eviction. Moving on to dating the daughter of a local restaurant owner. Megan wasn't doing well. Wasted a bunch of money on some online business scheme that turned out to be a scam. Started drinking heavily, and was living with roommates who were about to kick her out for not paying utilities. My father's knee problems had worsened to the point he needed surgery, but Medicare would only cover part of it. My mother was working part-time at a craft store but still dumping money into her failed candle business. She'd even set up a GoFundMe for Dad's surgery that had raised a whopping $340 in 3 months. I checked it out one night after a few sodas and donated exactly $1 just so they'd see my name on the donor list. Then they finally tried to reach out again. Mom sent me a message from a new number asking if we could meet. Of course I agreed. I wanted to witness it with my own eyes, see how badly they'd screwed up. They came over, knocking on my door. My parents and Megan were standing on the porch looking like they'd aged a decade in a year. "Thank you for seeing us," my father began. I nodded but said nothing. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," my mother continued. "About everything that happened, about Dubai, about how we treated you." Megan was crying silently. "Trevor bailed the second things got hard. You were right about him all along." "What do you want?" I asked, cutting to the chase. "I developed a pretty reliable detector over the past year." They exchanged glances. "We want to reconcile," my mother said, "to be a family again." "We need a place to stay," my father admitted. "Just until we get back on our feet." Same phrase, different day. "You disowned me," I said. "We're not family anymore, remember?" My mother reached for my hand. I moved it away. "Please," she whispered. "We were hurt and angry. We didn't mean it." "No," I replied. "You meant it at the time. You meant it when you thought other people would keep supporting you. You meant it until you ran out of relatives to leech off of." My father looked genuinely confused, like he couldn't comprehend why his apology script wasn't working. In his mind, saying sorry was always enough to reset everything. It never occurred to him that some damage can't be undone with words. "I'm not your backup plan," I continued. "And I'm certainly not going to let you move back into my property after the damage you caused." Megan's face hardened. "This is still about your stupid trip, isn't it? We've both paid for that. I lost my career because of the charges you filed." I looked at her directly. "You lost your career because you committed identity theft. Now you know what it's like when doors close because of things on your record." After minutes of back and forth, they lost hope. As they were leaving, I stopped them. I handed my father an envelope. Inside was $3,000. "This is for your surgery," I said flatly. They stared at the envelope, then at me. A glimmer of hope flashed in their eyes. "This isn't reconciliation," I continued. "This is closing our accounts. I won't have your health problems on my conscience. Nothing more." My father's hand trembled as he took the envelope. "Thank you, son," he muttered. "Don't call me that," I said, opening the door for them. I watched them walk to their car, heads down. On the drive home, they'd probably convinced themselves this was the first step toward getting back into my life. They'd be wrong. Still waiting on that call from Trevor's lawyer, by the way. It's been 379 business days.